Hello everybody, Robin here at Toadstool Tarot. Happy holidays. I got for Christmas the Yarn Tarot for crocheters, knitters, spinners, and weavers. I think it gives a little short shrift to the weavers, but very much focused on all the others. It's a very niche deck, I think, that will appeal particularly to those groups, but some others may enjoy it as well. It comes in a really nice, very hard and sturdy box, and the box has a little thumb pull at the bottom, and if you grip it tightly, it stays intact, but if you let your grip slip, the bottom slides out of the box, and contained within is another box. Knitting needles, yarn spindles, and crochet hooks, and squares of knitted projects. Inside you have the deck and a little hardcover book. You also have, you won't be able to see probably, but there are images of the tools on the insides of the box. I love that the guidebook is a little hardcover book, and this was actually really well written. The credits are a little bit confusing. On the copyright page, it says Editor Jacob Seifert. Now, I can only assume that he's the one that wrote the book, because it doesn't actually tell you who wrote it. Illustrator Katie Ponder. So I don't know if she just illustrated, well, I guess the illustrations in the book correspond to the cards, so I guess she's the one who illustrated the cards as well. There are illustrations in black and white. There's a really nice little historic background about what is the tarot, preparing to read the cards, attuning yourself to the cards. I won't read it all here, but there's some really nice stuff. And then there are a number of spreads. And then you have a page per card, description, upright, and a reversal. And I found that while this is a sort of a pippish deck, that these descriptions are written in such a generic but insightful way they can be used for any tarot deck. And I like that. The cards themselves are very sturdy. They're matte with, I don't even know if there's a lamination on there. There's a little bit of a sheen. If it's laminated, it's a very light lamination. They're matte, basically. These are the backs of the cards with all the tools on them. Open yourself, trust your intuition, cherish the journey. A couple extra cards for the front and back of the deck, which is sort of traditional, I guess, to keep your cards safe. But they're going to be kept safe in that sturdy box no matter what. The Fool. I like the color. This deck, the art is very stylized, which I always love anyway. That's what I prefer in my decks, for the art to be stylized. The color palette is autumn-winter colors. And so it's not specifically a holiday deck or a Christmas deck, but it really feels like a cold weather deck. And most of the characters in it are wearing sweaters or scarves or knit caps. When I get pip decks, I usually try to look at the cards and translate in my head to the RWS and see whether they will work for me, whether I can find similar meanings in the cards to help me. And in this deck, I think for the most part, if not every card, yes, that worked. The Chariot card I particularly like. We have a charioteer on a motorcycle with a big, I guess you might call that a third eye. He's wearing a helmet and a scarf, knitted scarf, and instead of the sphinxes or horses, we've got two sheep, which aren't really pulling the motorcycle, but sort of symbolically they're like the light sheep, the dark sheep. And the sheep reference is obvious because they are the ones that we get wool from to make yarn. Here on strength, we've got a cat with a ball of yarn instead of a lion. It's appropriate. On the hermit, instead of a lantern, he's holding up a ball of yarn, which is unspooling or unraveling. Another ball of yarn unraveling. I like the horses in this deck. They're very angular and big, kind of doe eyes. Temperance, instead of two pitchers of water, we have two yarn spindles with yarn between them. Tower, people falling and balls of yarn falling. The star, instead of the two pitchers, again we have balls of yarn unspooling. We have a ball of yarn unspooling the pathway on the moon. Sun. The colors are kind of muted. It's a limited color palette, but it's not my usual choice. But I kind of like the toned down quality of it. I love that everybody here is holding up a skein of yarn. Now for the minors, for the cups, we have spindles that you would spin wool on to make yarn. Here in the Four of Cups, we've got three spindles that one might be focused on, and a fourth being offered that maybe we're overlooking. Five of Cups, we've got 5 spindles we're looking away from in sorrow. One of the yarn segments has been broken, which is sad. Six of Cups. I like these little Christmas trees in here, so, you know, maybe there is a nod to the holidays in this deck. This is sort of the nostalgia card, so nostalgic memories of holidays and holiday yarn spinning, wool gathering, spinning yarns, telling tales around the holidays. 7 of Cups. Here's 7 choices, 7 things to choose from on various spindles, different colors, different kinds of yarn. 8 of Cups, walking away. 9. 10. The Page. I love how all the characters, I've probably already said this, wearing boots, wearing coats and scarves and knit caps. They're prepared for warm weather. I think this is going to be my go-to deck during the holiday season each year, but also it can be used the rest of the year. Next suit we have is the Pentacles, which, are yarn project squares, or, you know, like knitted pattern squares, like you might stitch together in a quilt. Here we have a nod to the RWS with the chapel's arch and the 3 projects that one might collaborate on. Here, the 6, we have that charity card, the sort of give and take, the distribution of charitable rewards or offerings. 5, we have a nod to the RWS in that the background is a snowflake pattern, where we usually see poor people outside of a church in the snow. Here we've got the 5 pips representing the Pentacles on a snowy background. So there's a little reminder there if you're familiar with your RWS. Here in the 7, where we usually have a gardener, we've got a couple gardener's tools and the 7 Pentacles. And again, what looks like a Christmas tree. I like that. Ten of Pentacles. Looks like a family assembling a quilt. Next we have swords, and the swords are represented by knitting needles. Here in the 4 of Swords, we have 1 needle at rest, with the other 3 waiting. The Six of Swords, this one took a little bit of thinking. It's usually depicted in RWS as people crossing a river in a boat filled with swords. So here we have our swords or needles in a ball of yarn. We have a project being worked on with these other two needles, or what would be like the oars of the boat, sort of making its way across the river. Here, the Eight of Swords, we have one needle with stitches cast on, surrounded by all these other needles. So there's a sort of a binding on of the yarn, which is, very close to the RWS figure surrounded or trapped by swords. Nine of Swords, I think this could have been done a little bit better. It's just somebody behind 9 needles. I would like to have seen a tangle of yarn, knotted yarn or whatever, on the floor, or perhaps a drop stitch somewhere in this project. Either one would be a nightmare card for a knitter. And this suit is the wands, which are crochet hooks. I like the Five of Wands here and the usual competition or battle. And here we've got 5 people all hooked and hung up on a single strand of yarn, sort of struggling with each other to figure out a way to make things work or take control. Six of Wands. I'm trying to, oh yes, Six of Wands is sort of the celebration card. We have a parade usually with a hero coming in. Here we've got one hook rising above the others, and it is almost wearing a project like a cape, sort of in celebration in a procession. And the Ten of Wands. So I'd be curious to hear what you think. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this palette. I think I like it, but it's very different than what I usually find joy in. It's kind of subdued. It's sort of a little bit low key. And you have the blues are not bright blues. They're kind of like cloudy gray day kind of blues. And the colors are, like I said, very much sort of autumny, wintry colors. I'm curious to know whether this is something that you think you might be able to work with, even if you are not a knitter, crocheter, wool spinner, yarn crafting enthusiast, or do you think this is sort of pretty much dependent on you being one of those things? Since I still have you here and I still have my battery, if the, knock on wood, if the camera doesn't cut out on me, I wanted to mention something in the guidebook. Let me grab my glasses here. I like this in What is the Tarot? The tarot is comprised of 78 cards divided into the major and minor arcana. While there are countless tarot decks with different themes and artwork, each has the same types of cards that represent the same things. When using a tarot deck, it's more important that you connect with that particular deck than which deck you use. Some believe the tarot taps into the spiritual or supernatural to provide a means of enlightenment or even divination. Others see the tarot simply as a means of self-exploration through contemplation, prompted by the symbolism and interpretations of the cards. Regardless of how you view the tarot, you should come away feeling uplifted. It is up to you how and on what level you connect with it. And I love that description. Attuning with your cards, preparing to read the tarot. There's some suggestions here, like you sleep with the cards under your pillow. Hold your cards, close your eyes, and visualize light entering your head, then flowing through your arms and into the cards. That's a fun concept. Touch and handle your cards often, which we all do. Cleanse your cards by fanning them out and blowing on them, and or placing them in a neat stack and tapping on them. You may also want to smudge them with sage. I've not heard of blowing or tapping on your cards before, so that's intriguing. Don't allow others to touch your cards unless you're offering a reading. Well, that's subjective, I guess. The more you familiarize yourself with your particular deck, the better able you'll be to discern and express interpretations. It talks about mental preparation, what you should do to prepare to read, shuffling the cards, placing the cards in the fan method, cutting the deck, turning the cards. These are all just suggestions, but interesting, I think. Start simple, relax, upright and reversed, connections, enjoy the journey. And then we have some spreads. It's a clarity spread, I think, is interesting. We have 4 cards. The one is the particular situation at hand. 2 to 4 are contributing factors, which they don't really tell you how to read, but I like that there are basically 3 cards that help define the situation. So I guess it's sort of like an open reading style. The week ahead, the year ahead. Some nice spreads here. Celtic cross, of course. Every guidebook has a Celtic cross in it. Major arcana. It's 1 page per card. The minor arcana have 2 cards on a page. So, but I love that it's a hardcover book, because you don't usually get that in your decks. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me and enjoying the yarn tarot, and I hope you find love and joy in this deck. In between working on your knitting projects, your eyes get tired with those, you can set your stitches aside and do a little reading with your cards. So, happy holidays. Enjoy.